Hello and welcome. We are broadcasting live from Global Nutripreneurs, the premier global gateway and unified operating system transforming the future of the global agri-food economy. Today, the global food system stands at a critical crossroads. While the demand for functional health, wellness, and nutritional security is expanding exponentially, early-stage innovators face massive roadblocks, fragmented supply chains, opaque cross-border regulations, and a staggering volume of unvetted noise that isolates brilliant founders from institutional capital. The cost of this friction isn't just measured in lost revenue. It is measured in the unacceptably high rate of global food waste and systematic nutrition insecurity. Promoted by the Global Council for Agri-Food Trade and Innovation and the Global Council for the Promotion of International Trade, Global Entrepreneurs was engineered to dismantle these barriers. We are moving decisively past passive business directories. Powered by a robust digital operating system featuring AI-driven fundamental matching and automated regulatory compliance hubs and an integrated virtual deal room, we are systematically transforming high-potential ventures into scalable investment-grade neutral businesses. Our ecosystem operates across 6 integrated strategic pillars, uniting a dedicated global R&D network, shared physical infrastructure via decentralized common facility centers, and an ESG-compliant trade and investment marketplace. Right now, our team is executing a massive global pipeline evaluation, reviewing over 10,000 agriculture, food, and nutrition businesses across more than 150 countries. Our mission is clear: to uncover the elite innovators shaping the next era of wellness, unlock friction-free global market access, and actively drive a 40% reduction in global post-harvest food losses. Today, as part of our Women in Food, Agriculture and Nutrition Forum series, we are mapping out the blueprints for this agriculture revolution. Joining us is a leader whose work sits at the very frontier of this transformation. Please welcome to the global stage our guest for today, Srishti Chatwal, sustainability and social impact professional with 7+ years of experience driving climate resilience, regenerative agriculture, ESG strategy, and CSR across corporate, startups, and development organizations. Experience in deploying 4+ crore in CSR capital, building impact measurement frameworks, and designing scalable partnerships that create measurable environment and social outcomes. She's worked with organizations including Rainmatter, SBI Foundation, Wabtec, Mahendra Sasson, ONGC, Dabur, and Niti Aayog's Airtel Incubation Center to advance climate-smart agriculture, water stewardship, circular economy, and sustainable livelihoods. Passionate about accelerating innovation ecosystems that align businesses' growth with sustainable deployment goals. Thank you for joining us to help shape the future of global entrepreneurs, and I request you to kindly proceed with your presentation. Over to you.
So, thanks, Rishika. I will pick up from where we left off. This is a presentation from Fields to Future, a detailed research that I worked on with professors at SPJMR. This is on precision agri-tech for climate resilience for food systems. Over 6 years, I worked very closely with the farmers, corporate startups, and even the government, not just on agriculture, CSR, or making water efficient systems profitable, but also deeply understood the importance of precision agriculture and climate resilient food systems. So this research and the experience combined, I gathered that why this matters so much. And the most important gathering from it is sustainability is not just about frameworks that we just impose in reports. It's what we recreate and co-create from right from ground up, listening to the ones on the ground. So this journey started when in 2019 I spent nearly 60 days walking down as probably part of the indigenous community researcher, literally walking with scientists and soil scientists and farmers nearly 25 Indian states of our country, and we documented their knowledge, climate adaptation practices, and learn from people who have been using these practices that are inculcated in the communities from generation. So this experience taught me that sustainability is not just something that we impose, but it is something that we need to build, and with people who live the problem every day. So today, more than nearly like 90% of farmers globally have access to right information. However, globally, the access and its implementation is just 5%, which is a stark gap. So, meanwhile, studying the agricultural religion, climate change, and how this can be implemented on ground and in India, that was the core part of the study. What if, like, every farmer had the same precision tools and industrial agricultural knowledge? This is the question that deeply drove within the study, and how these challenges can be solved. So we here then went deeper to solve it. So agriculture uses nearly 80% of world's fresh water. Yet most irrigation decisions are still guesswork. There's nothing that is happening through precision. It's just the water that just goes on the ground, thinking this much water is required to bring out the yield that a farmer is expecting. But there's no real data behind that guess backing it. So nearly 86% of smallholder farmers, I'm not talking about the large ones, really the vulnerable ones who are daily working on ground and are the most vulnerable to climate change, weather, water scarcity, money, market volatility. Globally, we are depleting groundwater at an alarming rate, which is 2 trillion cubic meter every year. And by 2050, we will be up to 5.7 billion people could face water scarcity at least 1 month each year, which we saw post this summer, that everybody in Maharashtra or across India were facing the scarcity of water, and especially the farmers. And what happens to food security when irrigation fails? This is an important question. If we actually see, the quality of our food is degrading year by year. And these are the real scientists who work on ground, who don't have the actual access to, say, sustainable finance or the capital, or even if they have the knowledge, but they might not have the right market access. Perhaps we worked on this study to really understand the adoption of the farmers and how the entire infrastructure can be improved, because it's a systems thinking map. It's just not the water or the land affecting food. It is also the irrigation practices and the farmers adoption, um, which lies actually in depth, and to be really understanding the unmonitored water infrastructure. This is where the real problem is. So here then we found out what is one of the fastest and the most precise way which actual Indian farmers are adopting to solve this problem. So this is a case study of a startup called Sika, and they do smart irrigation, which is that this is a system that fixes the real problem and making irrigation simple, reliable, and is data driven. No farmer has to really be dependent on uh, just guesswork. It also, the system works with no electricity as well. It works on solar energy built in Wi-Fi, which is called LoRa, and it works in low connectivity areas where there's no electricity as well. So if we attach this to existing pipelines through which the water goes to the main irrigation system, it literally needs not a massive infrastructure or massive infrastructure deployment or change in the existing ones. This is an important aspect, because the main challenge for the farmer comes is, even if I'm able to adopt this technology or have the capital too, in order to increase my yield or the quality of the food that I am going to bring out as a yield, they are not ready to adopt, because they have to change the entire system, which is a major cost. But in this system, they don't really have to do this. Perhaps the adoption where we studied in Maharashtra, Jalgaon, Jalna, Palghar, Baramati, nearly studying more than 250 farmers, a lot around the belt of Nasik as well. So that led to our understanding for this adoption, and there were two simple modes that led to it. First was the scheduler mode. A farmer can actually put an alarm where on their phone, and what how much water, when, at what time, and where it needs to go, they can just schedule it from their phone. They don't really need to go at nights, early morning, during the day, every now and then checking large acres of farmer where the water is going or not. Is it precise or not? Is it reaching the every crop or not? Is it going in extra supply or not? They don't really have to do it. They can see everything on their mobile phone, schedule it. The sensors give you data real time, and that's a real plus point, and the cost of it just starts from 6,000 rupees. Secondly, the sensor mode, automatic irrigation, that also tells the soil moisture. Now, understanding any plant, land, or food, soil is the key, which actually generates the yield and can improve the quality of food. So we touched base nearly 200 plus farmers and studied 1500 plus acre of automated lands, which saved nearly 2 billion liters of water in the entire study that we did. And there were water wastage that we actually were able to reduce was 40%, which is massive. I mean, this was truly an eye opener even for me as an outsider, to be understanding farmers' perspective, and on ground reality, and the importance of water in the field irrigation systems, and the quality of yield and food that actually gets generated. So, and also nearly 2.5x average income increase, because then they're not wasting extra liters of water, electricity while there's a shortage, or extra hiring of labor, and also problem solving indirectly the problem of unskilled labor available. So this was just a nudge of technology, but the entire design that can solve the large land and small landholder farmers as well. So how many farmers could really achieve these results with the access to this technology was again the second question that we asked. So here we didn't just assume what farmers need, we kept on asking them. And as an independent researcher, working with and questioning and meeting more than 500 plus farmers who use technology, who are at the early belt of adopting, and the ones who have already adopted and scaled. So both in Maharashtra, Karnataka, slight touch of Karnataka, the entire study that we published helped us understanding watering fell from half of the working day to 2 minutes, which means that the moment the sensor detects there's less water, the sensor immediately supplies to the crop with exact precision exactly, and that led to the yield increase to 80 tons per acre this year for more than nearly 150 farmers, and that actually led to the welfare of farmers. So while doing this study with this startup, farmers' adoption to this technology was not just a feature, but it was their freedom. It also solved, as I mentioned, labor shortage problem. Now, I would like to move to this case study, which is of Kiran Utale, a farmer that we closely interacted with. His yield was 25 tons per acre, which moved to 105 tons per acre, which is like a massive jump in numbers. And this is not just us through our study from one farmer. It was it was nearly an average of 100 plus farmers that we found there was this similar jump. So Kiran, who himself is a lawyer and holds 10 acres of sugarcane land in Sangli. So, because he also is on a regular job but is also a farmer by choice, he used to irrigate only once a week because he has a full-time job while managing his farm. Why we took this example? Because he is a modern progressive farmer who is working a full-time job but also managing a farmland where he cannot go every now and then, which is far away from the city and from his main workplace. So where he was just stuck with 25 or 30 tons per acre as a yield that would come out, installing this system where he could irrigate with precision and manage everything on his phone, his yield jumped to 105 ton per acre, and his income just tripled from 9 lakhs to 30 lakhs a year from farming while working a full-time job. So this investment that he made for automation and fertigation, meaning fertilizers could also go in precision. He made an investment of 3.5 lakhs out of his saving in 1 year, and by the time the systems lasted for 7 years with full capacity, his annual income just out of farming was 30 lakh rupees. So we could actually understand different indicators, not just the yield increase or water saved, but also lifestyle shift of a farmer, the freedom that they could afford. That's an important indicator that India is still fighting when it comes to agriculture or irrigation, taking it as a very stressful and helpless domain where we think it is someone with a full-time job cannot achieve, a farmer with a full-time job cannot achieve, which was a great interaction and sort of enlightenment that happened for our entire team as well, seeing such great examples of technology helping farmers build the future. So this is the journey. So it's irrigation started with automation, 1500 acres of generational real-time irrigation intelligence. This is driven by AI. So AI driven yield automation. So combining irrigation data, satellite data and soil data. The sensor tells everything on phone. Even the crop intelligence infrastructure, what's inside the app. So nearly India has 300 crores opportunity which needs to be cultivated. So global agri-tech market, which is growing nearly 12% per year, our 40% of large farms are now using some form of irrigation and automation systems, which is a climate smart invention that's leading to adoption that they see through peer influence. Once a top farmer adopts it, the chain follows. So that's another part of the study that we observed and deeply studied, interviewing farmers. Then we also try to understand the sustainability finance side of the work. Like, what's the scope? How in the next 2 to 5 years this can be defined in a way that actually reaches the last mile, and the next generation of farmers, how will they define embracing data driven systems? So this was another layer to it that we were trying to study. This is an ongoing thing right now. Perhaps I'm not sharing the results because we are still arriving at those results. Now here, scaling requires 5 things. So one of the most important things is data. Nearly 15 acres of land, generating real-time irrigation intelligence. Every farm we automated becomes a data node. So here data becomes the number one uh, part of the study. Second is the partnership, the kind of partners that we have who understand this adoption at scale and also further pushes this technology on ground to the farmers adoption. Because still here in India the system of agriculture is not decentralized, it moves from the top, and the adoption at the lower scale, which is a vulnerable farmer, for him to reach and adopt this technology, even with the awareness and surety, it takes like breaking a huge stigma that exists, and that hope happens only when a peer farmer in their community vouches for it, which has to be like a gatekeeper or a very influential farmer to be doing and adopting that. It's a very strong community that needs lot of resilience to get in. Third is the capital. This technology, for it to fully flourish, needs solid capital, which is decentralized. However, again, the fear of farmer for adoption, whether this will work out or not, the fear breaking into that is the challenge that connects with point number 2 that I was sharing. Perhaps comes the community. When they see the change, they believe in it, and then through word of mouth, the adoption in the real scenarios at a literally at ground level amongst the farmers happen. It's a farmer's trust that you have to win in order to really have them adopt this. Lastly is the technology, the ease of use. So whether it just cannot be in English, it has to be in lingual language, it has to be simple, it has to be easy. Even when they don't have Wi-Fi or data, it should work. So this is designed in those aspects. The economics of it is, it's a rupees 6,000 per year subscription. It leads to yield uplift to more than 3x times. And while scaling of this technology still is hard, having so many utilities, nearly 70% of smallholder farmers lack the access of this technology. But community-led adoption or routing through FPOs is one of the channels that through the study we could understand that leads to adoption, and also implement the global crop intelligence. So here the ecosystem synergy that I understood I thrive and could be literally deploying at scale. The few aspects were CSR and impact investing, which is really important. Second is the ESG and impact measurements. Having impact indicators and sustainability reporting frameworks aligned with the work that matches the global standards are really important for top players who have the decision making power and the deployment capabilities and capacity to really align, to find that alignment and impact measurements to be deploying on ground. Third aspect was having a thorough research and insight around when we talk our technology or data on ground leads to climate adoption and farmers and influences farmer behavior. It is data driven, so it needs to be solid and thorough. That actually leads to agri tech scaling. And here I just want to share that this is just not the next decade that we define, whether we can build solid food systems that are resilient, equitable and sustainable. The solution exists. Exists capital as well. However, what we need to do is connecting the stakeholder, the real stakeholder that exists on the ground, with the solution that can solve the entire problem, with technology, the information and the capacity building and the capital. These are three very important pointers that actually leads to the adoption to the real farmer scientist, farmer soil scientist who might not be uh, uh, who might not be thorough with probably having a fancy degree. However, he is a scientist, he or she is a scientist who works on ground, makes decision about soil, and knows so much about how food practices, farming, technology works. The important system that we lack is an ecosystem that connects the three. So, and the coming next decade, we would want to define whether we can build such efficient systems and food systems that are resilient, that are equitable, and sustainable. So just not with the existence of solution or capital, the important job here is to connect the dots and ensure the implementation happens uh, while we talk about AI and automation in agri-tech and on ground. So every data node needs to be connected, and crop is intelligent. The farmer in itself, he's amazingly intelligent and kind, and they care about food security more than people on the capital side of the world. It's the game of also equity that exists within the system that we need to bridge through this journey. Here I would like to talk about the research and the impact. So this research was done on ground. It took 1.5 years. It was done under the uh, learned professors of SPJMR, where I graduated from, and precision agriculture and adoption pathways was literally the heart of it, to understand what leads when we talk about AI, sustainability, food security, climate resilience, connecting these aspects at the heart of it, which is a farm and a farmer in very simple terms. And we studied nearly 200 farmers through Sika, which is the startup who deploy this technology, 1500 plus acres of land, and the saving that they do, where it is 2 billion liters of water or electricity that was saved, or per se the increase in income, to really understand how scalable this model is. Lastly, yeah, I think is a okay. Yeah, just lastly, I wanted to add that this was not just a pilot, this was a proven model that is ready to scale.
Thank you, Srishti, for sharing your valuable insights with the global entrepreneurs community. That was an engaging and thought-provoking presentation. I'd now like to ask you a few questions to dive a little deeper into your experience and perspective. So,
Sure.
given your experience advancing climate smart agriculture and regenerative farming practices across various geographies, what key ESG metrics or framework parameters do you prioritize to demonstrate clear ROI and environment impact to corporate CSR partners?
Sure. So that's an interesting question, and this was also part of what we studied. Because ESG it's something which is taken as a buzzword, at least at this moment, but few important indicators that we actually studied was water and environment, people and livelihood, and the business value it provides. Now, reason behind why studying this is something that I want to add. Water and environment, why it matters, because it is not just resource efficiency or climate action. It actually tells how systems literally save water, emissions that are reduced, water that gets diverted, and whether it is reusable water or not. Now, people and livelihoods, reason being, it directly holds a social impact, community well-being, whether farmers' income is increased or not, and business value, because it leads to the risk reduction, financial return, and revenue from sustainable products and the compliances. So this is really important because corporate partners want to see that sustainability as business value, and if we can showcase that saving of water that saves money and increases farmers income, the supply chain in itself becomes resilient. Yeah, perhaps.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. That's a very valuable insight. Building on to that, I'd like to move to my next question. Agritech startups often face adoption barriers at the smallholder farmer level despite strong technological promise. How do you approach designing strategic partnerships, example between incubators, corporates, and local development organizations, to help early stage food and agritech innovators scale commercially?
Right. So I've seen too many like brilliant agri-tech solutions that they fail. They completely fail because they were designed without understanding farmers' reality, and that's the truth of India. Uh, and like the approach here is very simple. The most important thing is that startups come up with fantastic idea. They try to solve a very important problem, but they fail to understand what's happening on ground and in different parts of the country, and genuinely with the farmer. So the most important aspect is to listen first and then co-create with them the problem they truly are facing. For example, the above case that I presented, uh, while it led to water saving and increasing farmers income, they shared that a lot of farmers deaths started to happening, and this was a new discovery for me while we went on ground talking to nearly 250 plus farmers. They said that this technology is fantastic, we want to adopt. And initially we thought the adoption is because there would be yield increase or they're saving so much of water, it's a water scarcity like area or region. This was one of the factor, but the main factor for their adoption was not this. It was they were dying. There were constant nearly 30 to 40 average deaths happening in those regions because there was no electricity, and the farmers used to, for switching on the pump, they used to travel to the farmland which is far from their house, say 2.5 or 3 kilometers, and snakes during rainy season they come out and they bite them, and this was a normal ritual. And this was a shocker because this was the reason that this approach, or this reason, we could not even have really imagined that was happening sitting in a boardroom or in a room trying to solve a complex problem or figuring out ESG metrics. It's when we actually went on ground, tried to understand the barriers that stop them, or important aspects that leads to farmers adoption. So then the approach is very simple: listen to them, involve farmers while we are designing a solution, then run small pilots, and then connect the startups with corporates, incubators, or government. These are your partners who act as an accelerator to push you in the right direction, and build local capacities as well simultaneously for farmers. Train them and keep training them so that they own it with agency, and then we can talk about scale, like perhaps that with this deployment this much increase happened, or XYZ, not just directly jumping onto it. So yeah.
That's a very interesting way to look at it. Moving on to our next question. With climate change increasingly threatening crop yields and nutritional quality, how can cross-sector initiatives bridge the gap between sustainable farming practices and biofortified nutritious food supply chains for vulnerable populations?
Right. So I think climate resilience and nutrition in itself are not separate goals. They are not separate. They're just part of food security, food systems, and that sustains both in people and planet. And it is because of rise in temperature and the heat, the climate impact that we talk. It leads to lower crop yields because of the direct exposure of heat. Now that also leads to underground water go down. That leads to water scarcity. Because of the water scarcity, the nutrients in the food or the crop which requires probably more water, that makes it less nutrient, so the quality of the food goes down. And soil degradation is another major aspect that we fail to understand, that contributes majorly to poor food quality. And the action that is needed, one of the aspects is definitely climate smart farming, that the case that was shared above initially through the presentation, to make crops resilient. You know exactly how much water is going, what's the nutrient, what's the moisture of the soil. Sometimes, for example, it's an iron rich millet. It's a nutrient enriched crop. And there's a part called biofortification. It needs to be addressed and monitored. Whereas supply chain is another aspect that connects farmers to very nutrition focused markets. We lack that in India. Actually, there's information asymmetry. It actually exists, but people in the urban areas lack to have access to that. So, the supply chain, the clean food market needs to be embraced as well. And then, lastly, and the most important aspect is technology that connects both the worlds. So, tracking both yield and nutrition outcomes at the same point in time and having the market access is another important way to have climate smart agriculture, nutrition, which are part of the same coin, and one cannot work without the other.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. That leads us nicely to the next topic. In your work spanning water stewardship and circular economy models, what are the most effective inventions you've seen for reducing resource intensity and food waste along the farm to fork value chain?
Sure. So, water scarcity and food waste are the same problem. Like, I know they are different terms, but they're part of the same problem. When we waste food, we waste the water that is used to grow it. And that's such a normal challenge, people throwing food. This is just out of my reflection. This may or may not be the right answer or the exact answer. However, this is purely self reflection that I've seen. So water use, because I worked in that domain and I could really relate with my value system as well. So water used for farming, which is nearly 70% of fresh water that is used in farming. However, the food wastage in our world is nearly 1/3 of food that gets wasted. And that also leads to groundwater depletion, which is massive per year. And what works at each stage, the intervention that you mentioned, smart irrigation, soil sensor, rainwater harvesting, these are maybe the important technology intervention. But there's also one very important aspect to it, is behavioral change among people, that you just can't teach the most educated ones as well. That is inbuilt value system that I think is part of our Indian homes. Gladly, that's one of the very beautiful part of our Indian homes, but people really need to imbibe that practice. Now, this is one part of the behavioral change aspect that I wanted to highlight, but also, technically speaking, from supply chain aspect, the intervention of cold storage, better logistics. Reason being, a lot of fuel and food get wasted in logistics. And waste to value, while turning waste into products. That's an important thing. There's a new term that a lot of people are using on internet, and people are talking about, is biochar. It is a very, very, very old method. That's not something new that has been invented. It's an intervention to just focus on better forecasting, and turning waste into a product that can be used from rice husk. So yeah, I think probably that's the change that we are looking at in order to have effective solutions that connects the dot.
Those are some excellent points. Let's explore another important aspect. As a speaker and visionary within the global entrepreneurs ecosystem, how do you see cross border platforms enabling impact investors, founders, and policy leaders to accelerate high yield, climate smart, and nutrition focused agri food solutions globally over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, that's an insightful question. So I think we lack platforms to that connect the missing link, and yours, Global Nutripreneur, is one of the important, I would say, local innovations that is leading to global capacity. We need more platforms like these where great innovations which stay local, but sometimes there's like a lot of capital, good policies, however they're not implemented well. Similarly, platforms that are trusted and can connect can lead to actually identify great solutions. They can connect founders with investors and the market, perhaps also the incubators and accelerators. Like a lot of farmers, entrepreneurs, they seek they have great solutions and they want to change and bring in a lot of radical and practical solutions to existence. However, they lack uh, reaching out to such platforms. So probably also democratizing access to capital and such opportunities, that those are two very important aspects that are popping into my mind and through experience what I've witnessed. Thirdly, a massive change in policy, connecting policymakers with innovators, which I think is happening through think tanks. I've seen it through Niti Aayog and other institutions, and think tanks deploying to a massive extent. However, harmonizing standards across borders and really understanding where we champion and how we can scale at a global level in this domain, that needs to be uh, nurtured. So yeah, so the next decade will definitely be defined whether we can build food systems that are resilient, equitable, and sustainable. But cross-border platforms are where we can connect the dots, and the innovation can meet the capital, the right innovator, and policy can meet a good practice.
I think that gives our audience a lot to reflect on. What an incredible masterclass of a conversation. Thank you for sharing your blueprints with us today. Your profound insights reinforce exactly why global entrepreneurs exist to bridge the critical gap between commercial profitability and sustainable social impact. To everyone tuning in across our global network, whether you're an innovator, an an investor, a policymaker, the path to plugging into this unified agri-food operating system is clear. For agri-food entrepreneurs and founders, stop struggling in isolation. Fast track your venture through our customized scaling pathways, leverage our AI-driven mentor matching, and utilize our automated regulatory compliance hubs to make your business cross-border ready. For accredited investors, eliminate the noise of unvetted pipelines, access our pre-evaluated investment-grade neutral businesses directly through our integrated virtual deal room, and secure your stake in the next era of health and wellness. For industrial and academic partners, collaborate with us. Let's unlock deep tech innovation through a global agri-food nutrition research and development forum and actively build a more equitable ecosystem by championing leadership at our Women in Food, Agriculture and Nutrition Forum. Together, we can maximize our global networks and deploy decentralized common facility centers to actively drive that 40% reduction in global post-harvest food losses. The future of the global agri-food economy is no longer about survival. It is about sustainable nutrition, scientific excellence, and friction-free global trade. Visit globalentrepreneurs.com to secure your application, verify your venture, and claim your place in the future of food innovation. Thank you for joining us in Global Entrepreneurs. Until next time, keep innovating, keep scaling, and build with impact. Have a good day.